The most underrated tool in the tool belt to heal trauma with psychedelics, the imagination. Let's go ahead, let's talk about it, because this is really a fun topic. All right, hi everybody, my name is Jill. Welcome back to the Journey Sage. And this is the channel that I wish had been around when I was going through MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for childhood trauma-induced PTSD. Because before my therapy, I had zero understanding of the power that the mind has to actually go back and change memories and change feelings around memories. I, just like I think most people out there, just kind of thought, this is my life, this is the way I think, this is the way I feel, and that's it. And I've learned through MDMA therapy and the work since with psychedelics that that's simply not true. We are dramatically able to change our perspective and our opinions on things as soon as we start to acknowledge that our brain can do those things. Now, the way that my brain does it, remember, I was an English major way back in the day. I love imagery. I love visualizations. So if you're one of those folks that isn't able to imagine or visualize, you might want to stop right now, because this video is all about my experience with being able to visualize and use imagery. So there are three main ways that using my imagination during any sort of psychedelic integration process or even during psychedelic journeys works. The first one, reparenting, putting myself as an adult back into a childhood memory. Number two, inviting my younger Jill or Jills to the current day. And then three, just kind of honoring and celebrating my inner child when she speaks up. So let's go ahead, let's talk about it. All right, so the very first one is what seems to be a relatively complicated idea, but in reality, it's very simple. When it was first proposed to me, I was like, this is not going to work. My therapist, I don't know what she's thinking, but this is not going to work. And then I was totally wrong, and it works. If you've heard of Dr. Schwartz, IFS, Internal Family Systems, one of the things he talks about is that we all have parts in us. The same way that we have extended family and everybody kind of plays a role, we have parts in us. And it's a really great therapy kind of theory, because it makes some things very concrete. For me, one of the concrete ways that I think about things is I think about different ages where I've suffered trauma as parts. Did I have lots of other parts? I had an overworking part. I had a worrying part. I had a fighter part. Yes. In addition, I had a lot of parts of certain ages. So one of the very first times that my therapist did this particular exercise with me, I was talking about when I was 16, my mother slapped me across the face, threw me out, and I had to go live with my father. And it was a very traumatic memory. I could remember my mom looking at me and the hatred in her eyes and just my entire world crumbling at 16, because everything was kind of dashed within 10 minutes. What my therapist suggested, and requires a bit of imagination, was put adult Jill in that situation. What did 16-year-old Jill need during that memory? And 16-year-old Jill needed an adult in the room to say, don't worry, it's going to be okay. You're going to survive this. Whatever is going to happen within the next year or two is not nearly as catastrophic as you think it's going to be. I'm here. I've got you. You can do this. So that process, inserting myself into memories, it blew my mind. I was like, what are you talking about? That's not going to work. I will say it didn't work the 2 or 3 or 4th time I did it. It absolutely started to work when I started working with psychedelics specifically, because psychedelics kind of scramble the normal thought processes in your brain and allow you to see different perspectives. And what a great way. Put your adult self, who is knowledgeable and knows that things are going to be okay, or certainly not as bad as the age of the time that it's happening. 16, the world is coming to an end. Putting yourself as the responsible adult in the memory. Now, to be honest with you, when I look back on that memory, I think I was 47 at the time, 47-year-old Jill is in that memory. Just kind of like hanging back, making sure everything is good. And that's the way I think about that. That memory does not get me upset. That memory doesn't make me sad anymore. That memory is just, another page in the book of Jill's life. So that premise of a reparenting or going back to a specific age or helping out a specific part of us is a tremendous, tremendous strategy, and it requires a good bit of imagination. So I encourage you, go ahead and have some fun with that. And if you want to learn more about that particular strategy, go ahead and do an internet search for Dr. Schwartz. He is incredibly generous with his meditations online. You can find them on YouTube. Really fantastic way of kind of interrupting some of those memories from way back when. All right, the second one is kind of just literally the opposite. There were a few times during my therapy year where I brought younger Jills or Jills of certain ages to my current house in my imagination. And so what did that mean? Well, I was thrown out like 3 different times in my life for a variety of reasons. And my parents were not particularly stable, so they wound up moving around a lot. And so the idea of a stable place that is safe was kind of new to, Jill as she grew up. And so it was not uncommon for me to visualize or imagine Jill at 10, Jill at 5, Jill at 16, believe it or not, Jill at 24, in my house, just kind of allowed to live. And I remember very distinctly when I would have these visualizations, my kind of younger parts, using IFS terminology, would just kind of stand there and they just didn't know what to do. And as it allowed my imagination to continue to flourish, all of a sudden they started acting their age. The little 3-year-old, she wanted to color. Little 5-year-old, she wanted to play with dolls. The 16-year-old was messing around with makeup. The 24-year-old was dealing with finishing up college, things of that sort. They were able to relax. I don't exactly know where in my mind this helped because it wasn't a specific memory I was accessing. I know for me, it made me feel so much safer. And I repeated that exercise kind of whenever I had an inner child just kind of like speak up. And that was basically through my therapy. So the first one is I go into the memories as an adult. The second one is my inner children who felt kind of insecure would show up at my house and realize, wait a minute, there is stability, there is security. And then the third one is just really fun. It shows up for me in terms of food a lot, or in terms of like stuffed animals. It's just listening to what brings you joy or brings you delight. And a lot of the times it's something that a child would find delightful. The other day, I saw like a ridiculous sugary cereal that 55-year-old Jill knows has 0 nutrition, 0 purpose. But boy, 8-year-old Jill went, oh, that would be fantastic. We need to try that. Luckily, 55-year-old Jill realized it was a sugary mess and kind of disgusting. But I honored that inner child, the delight that she had when she saw that. And that's actually a very comforting, very safe, great thing. I mean, one of the reasons why we enjoy holidays so much is kind of reliving what it was like as a child to go through different traditions and get gifts and things of that sort. We see our inner child all the time. And so why not take the opportunity to experience the delight again by kind of honoring what that inner child means or whatever that inner child needs. I mean, heck, a couple of months ago, I bought a ridiculous stuffed animal because I saw it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's adorable. Does it match my decor? Not one little bit. Does it make me smile every time I go by it? Pretty much. So my imagination of honoring those inner children from the past with whatever brings me delight now, I think is also a really great strategy. So there you go. I really believe that if we understood as a society how powerful our imaginations are and how imagination and imagery can be used in therapy, specifically in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy that really opens up our mind to allow for shifts in perspectives, I think we'll see people responding to therapy in a completely different way. My opinion, I'm just a gal on the internet. I just know that these particular strategies helped me out tremendously throughout my entire healing process. So with all of that said, if you want to hear more about my specific healing journey with MDMA, my memoir workbook, they're up on Amazon. I've got a 5-day free email course that explains from a bird's eye view what MDMA therapy is. I'll go ahead and I'll throw that URL down here. And of course, you can always head over to thejourneysage.com. I've got a bunch of resources there for folks. And so with all of that said, I wish you happy visualization. And until next time, take care.